The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Call in or text live 414-395-0484. Thought-provoking talk radio covering all topics from local to national and everything in between. It may not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. That's The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Podcasts available on our website, theforum2.com. Check us out.
I want to ask you about your running mate. I don't know if you saw, well, I saw today that the news report broke that Amy Klobuchar was being vetted, and a lot of people on social media, they're not too happy about that. And it's because they want your running mate to be a Black woman. I don't know if you saw the op-ed in the Washington Post by some of the leading Black women voices in this country. And they feel since Black women are such a loyal voting bloc and Black people saved your political life in the primaries this year, they have things they want from you. And one of them is a Black woman running mate. What do you say to them?
What I say to them is that I'm not acknowledging anybody who is being considered, but I guarantee you there are multiple Black women being considered. Multiple.
You know, thanks so much. That's really our time. I apologize.
You can't do that to Black media.
I can't do that to white media and Black media because my wife has to go on at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't Black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man. I extended the voting rights 25 years. I have a record that is second to none. The NAACP has endorsed me every time I've run. Come on. Take a look at the record.
Good morning. Welcome to the program. Today is Friday, and thank God it's Friday. August 14th, 2020. So I wanted to play that. Remember that clip or that interview that Joe Biden did with Charlemagne? That was early June. That was like June 3rd. And all y'all got mad because Joe Biden said, if you haven't figured out if you're for me or if you're for Trump, you ain't Black. And then, of course, the question of who Joe Biden's running mate was going to be. We were having those conversations because it seemed like the campaign season was not going to be like a traditional presidential campaign. There weren't going to be any, big events, any big rallies. You're not going to have these debates over the crowd size of Joe Biden's rallies or of Donald Trump's rallies. At that point, Joe Biden was the presumptive Democratic nominee. And so we needed something else to give us some energy or some momentum in early June. I also remember when Charlemagne did that interview with Joe Biden in June a couple of months ago, the George Floyd protests hadn't even reached their crescendo yet. So there was all of this unrest that was happening right in front of our very eyes. And so we wanted to at least have a default setting of a presidential campaign with Joe Biden being the nominee, as disappointed as some of you were in Joe Biden being the presumptive nominee. We needed more, right? We needed to know who his running mate was going to be so we could then shift our focus to her. And I say her because Joe Biden knew even then, and let's be honest, he knew it was going to be Kamala Harris when he did that interview with Charlemagne on June 3rd. He knew. Now, he couldn't say anything, but he knew. Tom Perez made it clear to us in 2018 when we saw the midterm elections where Democrats took back control of the House of Representatives and then renominated Nancy Pelosi to be the Speaker of the House. Tom Perez was saying things that I'd never heard him say prior to. Now remember, Tom Perez beat Keith Ellison to be chair of the DNC. You guys remember that? That was racially divisive, even though Tom Perez was trying to stand on his Latino roots, okay? But Keith Ellison is who we wanted to be the chairman of the DNC. Former congressman in Ilhan Omar's congressional district in Minneapolis. I think that's the 5th congressional district in Minneapolis. Keith Ellison was the first Muslim American elected to the House of Representatives. He went on to be the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, and he is the prosecutor, right? You know, Keith Ellison is the prosecutor in the George Floyd case. Instead of getting other legal counsel or finding somebody else, they're using Keith Ellison to prosecute the cops that murdered George Floyd. He is who we wanted to be the DNC chairman because it just made sense. And Tom Perez knew when he got elected DNC chair, we have to acknowledge black people and black voices and black votes. Because Tom Perez only became DNC chair because he ran a smear campaign on Keith Ellison. But people do unusual things to obtain power. Power in and of itself, Michelle Obama's words, not mine. Power in and of itself is not corrupting, it's revealing. And I want you guys to remember that. I don't want you to think that Joe Biden, because he is the Democratic nominee, that he is going to become corrupt, or if he's going to be the racist that all of you think he is. Joe Biden is no more racist, in my opinion, than your third grade math teacher. Joe Biden is no more racist than the people that you work for right now. Joe Biden is no more racist than somebody who might be scanning your groceries at the Metro Mart. But it's also his power that he may obtain, Joe Biden, is going to be revealing of who he is. When I say it's revealing, it's about who he puts in very key positions. Who is Joe Biden going to put atop the Department of Housing and Urban Development? Who's going to be his national security advisor? Who's going to be his White House counsel? Right? Who's going to be ahead of the EPA? Who is Joe Biden going to put to the head of FEMA? It's going to be very revealing of who he is. And you know who I think a lot of those people are going to be that are going to lead the policy and execute federal law in the Biden administration? Is going to be a bunch of black women. So I'm telling you this now so you're not shocked when it actually happens. And so you can justify how you're a non-voter, how you don't believe in democracy. Because I'm at a point now where, you know, anti-vaxxers, of course you do, because some of you are anti-vaxxers. Anti-vaxxers share a commonality with people that always think of a reason why they can't or why they shouldn't vote. Well, you know, Joe Biden is racist and Kamala Harris is a cop. When you have to tell people that see politics differently than you, how you actually feel, you are telling us that you're a non-voter and that you're okay with other people making decisions for you. And I'm perfectly honest when I say this. I am okay with making political decisions on behalf of people that just don't know any better. Don't worry, we're going to take care of you too, you non-voters out there. Good morning, everybody. Alicia Griffin says, I heard that conversation you played with Charlemagne and Biden. Thanks for the reminder, Sherwin. Biden forgets that he ain't Obama and he ain't all that. People aren't voting for Biden. They are voting against Trump. Now, this is a long, make sure I get it all here. Hold on, Alicia. Oh my God, I'm not reading all that. I only saw the first part of your message, Alicia. That's a lot to read. He ain't all that. People aren't voting for Biden. They're voting against Trump. Now, this is a long copy and paste, but this is why folks are casting a ballot for Biden. Don't get it twisted. So before I read that, Alicia, and I will read it, we're not going to paint with a broad brush and say, this is why people are voting for Joe Biden. Some people actually like him. Some people believe in him. Some people, you know, give credit to him for being helpful to Barack Obama. And so everyone has their own reasons. And let me also say this. People aren't voting for Biden. You know, you say in your post that, you know, Biden forgets that he ain't Obama. No, he's reminded every single day. In fact, every time Joe Biden has a conversation or a Zoom call or a telephone call with Kamala Harris, Joe Biden is reminded that he is not Barack Obama. Everywhere on the campaign trail that Joe Biden went, he is reminded that he is not Barack Obama. But what Joe Biden can do is stand on the record of accomplishment that Barack Obama helped achieve. Because even if we didn't want Joe Biden in the room, Joe Biden was in the room. And I also believe this because I know how the inside baseball works. Joe Biden was preparing Barack Obama for a lot of the political battles that Barack Obama had no experience dealing with, that Joe Biden had been in those rooms for 40 years. I'm voting for that. there's a level of experience because you can't just get elected to the U.S. Senate, serve a year and a half, and then run for president and think that you have all of the expertise and all of the experience to handle Congress, to handle Republicans, to handle the NRA and special interest groups. I think Joe Biden was very instrumental in helping Barack Obama navigate these waters, because we can say, Joe Biden was, working with these segregationists. He also knows where all of their bodies were buried. See, the thing about being in politics for a very long time, here's what Joe Biden knew. And here's how they could twist some of those Republicans' arms, because at the top level of politics, it's so dirty. Joe Biden may have worked with a bunch of segregationists, but Joe Biden also knows which members of Congress, the House and Senate, are cheating on their wives. Joe Biden probably also knew which one of those Southern Dixiecrat segregationists got black women pregnant and made those black women get abortions. See, that is the value that Joe Biden can bring being in Washington, D.C. for 40 years, and that is invaluable. If the Democratic candidate turns out to be your least favorite, as disappointed as you may be, please remember, 1, you're not just voting for president. 2, you're voting for who replaces Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. You're voting for the next Secretary of Education and getting rid of the horrible Betsy DeVos. You're voting for federal judges. You're voting for the rule of law. You're voting for saving national parks. You're voting for letting kids out of cages. You're voting for clean air and clean water. You're voting for scientists to be allowed to speak about climate change and for the rebuilding the CDC. You're voting for what a president says and does on Twitter. You're voting for housing rights. You're voting for LGBTQIA people to be treated with dignity. You're voting for non-Christians to be able to adopt and feel like full citizens. I'd imagine adopt children. You're voting for dreamers. You're voting so that there will be Social Security and Medicare when you retire. You're voting for veterans to get the care they deserve. You're voting for rural hospitals. You're voting so that someone else can have health insurance. You're voting for the preservation of PBS. You're voting to have a president who doesn't embarrass the country every time she or he attends an international meeting. You're voting against allowing the USA to become yet another authoritarian regime. You're voting for sensible gun laws. You're voting to save our postal service. No Democrat is perfect. Your first and second choices may have dropped out. Your third might. But the nominee, no matter who she or he is, won't be perfect. They won't pass your purity test. And yet every single one of them will be better than 4 more years of Trump. Please be reasonable. So first and foremost, that was written by a white person, a white liberal progressive, because it didn't mention nothing about black people and all that. And let's be real clear. People don't even know some of that stuff that was in that post. That's for like people that have a real deep political understanding. I didn't see nothing about black people. I didn't see nothing about central cities. I didn't see nothing about black businesses in that post. So fair enough, I get it. But that's for white folks that are mad that it's not Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That's who wrote that. But all right, we have white people in here listening too. I sometimes forget that. Shout out to the whites. I like the whites. Sarah Lovern Laguerre, sound is working. Good morning. You had a bit of a technical difficulty this morning, but we got it fixed. Tammy Reed, good morning to you. Monica Emma, good morning. Vanessa Garrett, okay, that's better. Good morning, Sherwin. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to you too. Ken Trawl B, we have sound now. And he throws up the black fists. Oh, shout out to the Milwaukee black firefighters that gave me this t-shirt. So now as I'm trying to wear a different t-shirt every day, yo, we're on like 70 shows, different t-shirt every day. So I got a t-shirt drawer. Because you know how you just have t-shirts? Like you go to different events and people like give you t-shirts. In the years I was on broadcast radio, I love the people that listened to me, that used to listen to me when I was on the radio, because they would bring me so many things. Sometimes they would like make food. I appreciate the thought, but you can't eat everybody's food, but thank you. But I also got a lot of t-shirts, and from the the different things that I've been involved with over the years. And so I'm going through the t-shirt drawer this morning, and I had a bit of a dilemma, because it says right here, this t-shirt, eventually I'm going to have to wear it. But I don't want some people get upset because I try to be respectful of everybody's views, especially about different politicians. Some of y'all love some politicians, and those same politicians that are loved by some are hated by others. Do y'all remember that there was an effort to recall Tom Barrett? Like, when was that? Like 2016? And so I got I forgot I had this t-shirt. So I obviously went to the event. Now, the recall didn't go anywhere. But somebody got look at here. Look at Tom. Look at Tom's face. Hold on now. Make sure Tom ain't upside down there. Hold on now. Look. Ooh, Tom gonna be mad. But so when I wear it, it's just because it's hot in here. It's because I have a lot of t-shirts. And I'm gonna wear it eventually. Mary Braun, good morning. Alden Higgins, my man. Alden, thank you for recommending this program to someone who is looking for different podcasts. I don't really... So you can listen, you can view live Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Then we have a YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you type in the website, theforum2.com, theforum2.com. Type that into YouTube. Our YouTube channel comes up where you can see just in chronological order all of the programs that we have done. And I say we because you guys are very helpful in this with the comments that you bring. You can see all the broadcasts that we have done since, wow, I guess almost the beginning of the pandemic. So there's that. But then I have all, like going back to 2014, I have all of my interviews and my radio shows that I did on 2 different radio networks, all in my podcast folder that you can sign up for on the website. But what I don't do, and I should do, I started doing it, is making podcasts out of these Facebook Lives so people can just listen to the audio. I think I did it for like a couple of months, and then I just... Because there's a lot of ways that I want people to be able to access this information, because I hope one day what we talk about here is going to be very valuable in the future. So when people ask that question, I'm talking about people that aren't even born yet, because they're going to hear a lot about 2020, because we're still writing the story of the year 2020. They're going to want to know, like, what was everybody thinking about? What were people talking about? What were the politics like? And so we have essentially, we've created a video diary in chronological order of the events as they happen every single day. And for that, I thank you guys. And I love doing this. And also, I can do it from my house. Like when Sarah Palin said, I can see Russia from my house. Alden Higgins says, nice shirt, bro. Thank you. Susie Roundy Schmidt said, damn, I picked the wrong line of work. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Star says, good morning, happy Friday. Great morning, says Priscilla Clayton Wallace. Tammy Reed, yep, I remember that split to head the DNC back when Tom Perez was vying to be the DNC chairman, which he ultimately won, but he had to beat Keith Ellison. Jennifer Garcia says, dang. And then there's the comment that Alicia Griffin posted as I'm going in chronological order of the comments that you guys are leaving. I'm tired of listening to you people. I got to hold my nose and vote for Joe Biden. Do you understand that a big part of life is doing stuff that you don't want to do? Puff Daddy said this a long time ago. You know what he said? He said, I want to lay in bed, have sex, and eat turkey sandwiches all day, but I can't do that. There's some things that you just don't want to do that you have to do. Let me tell you something. Some of y'all got a job you hate, but you hold your nose and go to work, don't you? You hold your nose and go. You hate your boss. You hate your coworkers. You hate doing it. Same thing. You hate Joe Biden. You hate Kamala Harris because she's a cop and Joe Biden is a racist, and you got a racist white man and you got a cop running for president against a fascist, a proven fascist, by the way. And that's what people are complaining about. You can't get everything that you want, especially when it comes to politics. It's never going to happen that way, because you know when you can get whatever you want? When you run for office yourself. Ain't not nan one of y'all who complains about the choices are going to put your name on a ballot anytime soon, and you know you're not going to do that. You know you're not. So stop complaining. If you can't find the perfect candidate, then maybe you're the perfect candidate because only you can check all of your boxes, but you ain't never going to run for office. You want to know why? Because you probably lose. Running for office is tough. Even if you win with 51% of the vote, 49% of the people in your district don't like you and didn't vote for you. Probably would never vote for you again. Gotta keep that in mind. And some days, and legislators and executives will tell you this, if they win with 51% of the vote, which is enough of a victory electorally to where there's no challenge, there's no recount, okay? You win with 51% of the vote. There might be days or weeks when you're going to events, when you're out in public, when you're speaking to the press, where the only people you're hearing from are the 49% that didn't vote for you. And sometimes that's every single day. Now, you will have days where you hear from the people that did vote for you. But as voters and as constituents, when we're happy with our elected officials, when we like what they're doing and when we support them, we never say anything. We only speak up and get loud and obnoxious when they make us mad. So if you believe that your elected officials are doing the right thing and they're standing up for you, don't just quietly clap your hands. Send them a message, send them an email, give them a telephone call. And I learned that a long time ago. And the way I learned it didn't even come from working with legislators or executives. I had one of my high school teachers tell me, because I ran into this teacher many, many years after I graduated. And she said, Sherwin, whenever students, they grow up and they become successful, they get out into the real world, and they remember us and they thank us for teaching them, because teachers do such wonderful things that have had a profound influence on some of their students, but the teachers may not always know that because we don't always tell them. But I will be honest with you, if my family, my background, of course, where I grew up, but my teachers were just as influential and instrumental in my success as probably anything else. Just like elected officials, when they're doing the right thing and they're standing up for us, thank them. Don't just get mad and yell at them and cuss them out when they screw up, because they're going to screw up. Especially when they're dealing with an electorate that doesn't necessarily vote on policy issues. We vote on emotion. We vote on who is more attractive. For years in the United States, if you had two men running for president, the man who was taller won the election. I think the only time that didn't happen in the last 100-some years is George W. Bush. Because John Kerry was taller than George Bush. And statistically, John Kerry should have beaten George Bush in 2004 because John Kerry was taller. People vote on arbitrary things. So whenever you find an elected official that's actually doing the right thing and doing right by you and your community, thank them. Don't just cuss them out when you get mad at them. I have other things I want to talk about today. David Todd, good morning, sir. Tammy Reed is replying to Alicia. She said, that's a whole lot. Alicia said, girl, you are oh so right. My bad. Udell Harris, good morning. Alicia Griffith says, don't read. Direct folks to read. What? You should have said that, Alicia, before you posted a comment, because I'm glad I read it. Because I could tell it was written by somebody white, because it didn't mention nothing about black folks. It didn't mention nothing about black women who are going to be vice president of the United States. And I don't want to paint anyone with a broad brush, but if you look at the contrast that exists in America, we went from the image of black women being Aunt Jemima. You know how many white folks got mad that they're changing the syrup lady? Ooh, the white folks got mad. I want a slave on my syrup bottle. The syrup don't taste the same unless it's got a slave woman on it. You go from Aunt Jemima being removed as the logo to a black woman potentially being the 47th president of the United States. And that happened in lightning. This is why people have such a profound fear of black culture. We can change direction in this country at the speed of light, at the speed of the internet. People get mad, they voice their concerns, not just in the streets, but also online. Whatever the parent company is of Aunt Jemima, they was like, we don't want none of that smoke. We're going to change the logo. And then the same year, you get a black woman who went to a historically black college. You know how enrollments are going to go up now at historically black colleges and universities? Because Howard University can produce a potential president of the United States. That's really big. And I say it's big because it's something that we always knew as black people and black culture, but America never wanted to recognize. Like, black things are second tier. We're the consolation prize. No, you want to go to a Big Ten university, or you want to go to a Pac-10 university. Oh, you don't want to go to a historically black college and university. But now that those universities can produce someone that could be the 47th president of the United States, y'all gonna have an about face, I'm sure. David Todd says, thank you. Michelle Wilborn says, good morning. I said good morning right back at you. Gail Williams, good morning all. Mary Braun, thanks for that, Sherwin. Biden has 8 years under Obama, and too many folks crying they're not voting. They just want attention. I don't know if there's anybody who realistically believes that life wouldn't get marginally better if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris got elected. It would get marginally better because don't you think we all will let out a collective sigh of relief? Because Donald Trump doesn't want an election. You know that, right? He doesn't want an election. He wants to steal. He wants to manipulate. Do you know why you ain't got the second check? Your little Trump check, your little stimulus check? You want to know why you haven't gotten it? I'm going to tell you why. Because some of y'all just don't get it. You're going to get it today. The hold up on your second $1,200 is because the Democrats in Congress want your second stimulus check to come with some caveats. You know what that caveat is? $25 billion for the post office so your vote can count. Donald Trump is not going to give you a second stimulus check if it means funding the post office, and not just for the election. Some people are getting their correspondences. They're corresponding with friends and family via the mail. Some people are getting their deliveries via the postal service. Some people are getting their damn prescriptions through the mail service. Donald Trump wants to gut the post office. And if the Democrats don't agree to that, you're not going to get another $1,200 because Donald Trump is standing in the way. Now, if you want to sit here and call Joe Biden a racist and you're not going to vote for him, you ain't going to get your $1,200 and your vote's not going to count if Donald Trump gets reelected. That's real simple. It's like I just get so tired of having these conversations with people. Like, I got to sit them down like explaining a third grader algebra. There's no algebra here. There's no, I don't. Alicia Griffin, thanks for that info on Biden, Mr. Sherwin, not Sherman. Thank you. Information about how to navigate in D.C., it's key. Washington, D.C. is sex, lies, and videotape, and it's murder. Remember what's her name? I hate when I forget people's names. She was an intern, not Monica Lewinsky, not her, but that's a part of the sex, lies, and videotape. But there was a young lady who she was an intern, and she worked on Capitol Hill. And she was found dead. She went for a jog. Remember her? She worked for a senator, and there was some rumor that she had an illicit affair with a member of Congress. Because, have you ever been to Capitol Hill? It's a bunch of old, the last time I was there, the last time I worked on Capitol Hill, that was a long time ago. So when I went, this was in 2002, it was all old white guys. And like everywhere in D.C., it's old white men and young, really attractive women. They're staffers. Because all these old men, I think Robert Byrd might have still been in the Senate when I worked for a member of Congress. But it's all these old, disproportionately lawyers, overwhelmingly Jewish, overwhelmingly wealthy, old white guys, and they're young 22-year-old, 21-year-old, 19-year-old interns and newly minted college graduates working on Capitol Hill. What do you think is going to happen? Then you got K Street with all the lobbyists pouring all of their money and their influence into Washington, D.C. That was even before the campaign finance reform. There was the McCain-Feingold Act, which then basically created all these other interesting organizations, which I have one of, sorry. But back then, money just flew all over the place. GOTV in the city of Milwaukee in the presidential election of the year 2000 So GLTV is the large effort when you're right on the heels of on the heels of the election. So the election is coming up, so that weekend before the election, because elections are always the first Tuesday after the first Monday or something. So the weekend before any election is the big push, the last minute push to get voters to the polls to support your candidate. We call that GOTV. We call that get out the vote. Now we do it digitally, but back then, because there were so few rules governing campaign cash, GOTV was done in cash. And I'm not going to give you no details of it. I'm sure those of you that know. But when Democratic campaigns came to Wisconsin, because back then Wisconsin was a blue firewall, but of course you wanted to make sure that Democratic voters were engaged. So when you heard about things like, cigarettes for homeless people and all that happened because there was no rules. There would be GLTV used to be a big bag of cash. You'd find black community leaders that had influence on certain segments of the black community that white people didn't even fool with. Because back then the Democrats didn't love us as much, because at least in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin was going to be a blue state, so you didn't have to get into the detailed microcosmic issues of black people back then, because we just were a blue state. So you didn't really care about black folks. Now we're everything. But you would just give some black community leaders cash and tell them, here you go, because there's no accountability on the money. There wasn't back then. I mean, this is 20 years ago. We've obviously reformed a lot of those systems. And really the system didn't start getting reformed until Republicans started to lose. Because that was something that was respected by both sides. When you want to get your voters out to the polls on the heels of an election, people look the other way when you gave people bags of money. You give, the executive director of XYZ that services, a majority black population in the black community, you give them a certain amount of money, give them a bunch of yard signs and some campaign literature, and you tell them to go distribute, this literature, hire whoever you want, pay them whatever you want, and that's how it worked. We don't do that anymore. Mary Braun says, Biden's experience is invaluable. Thanks. MV Skokie Sabali. Good morning, Mary Braun. Trump is pure evil. Who doesn't get that? A lot of people don't get it. Or they see all politicians as evil. Alden Higgins, you're welcome, my brother. Jeff Polinsky, what up, Jeff? I suggested to my 13-year-old daughter, Emma, to journal her experiences this year because someday her grandkids will interview her for a school project on what was 2020 like to live through. Oh, so many movies are going to be made about this year. And we're not going to like them because Hollywood is going to dramatize the year 2020. So just as an example, Hollywood is going to take the George Floyd protests, which were largely peaceful, and the movies that will come out 30, 40, 50 years from now about the year 2020 is just going to show people shooting each other in the streets. It's going to show civil war. So Hollywood is going to overly dramatize this. So whatever logical historical records we can keep, and the internet is going to provide a lot of that. So talk to people and text people and tweet people so we have this record. You know what else is going to be frozen in time? Donald Trump's tweets. Because a lot of Donald Trump's most egregious tweets, we screenshotted and saved. So people are going to be like, well, what was 2020 like? Here, let me show you what the damn president was saying on Twitter. And like, nobody told him that his tweets are going to last forever. Forever. Ronald Gergen says, I'm listening. Thank you for listening. Ronald, David Todd said, word. Jeff Polinsky, former Senator Bill Bradley, once wrote that when he entered politics, 80% of his constituents often called to thank him. When he retired, 80% only called to yell at him. Par for the course. Laura Manriquez, always a blessing to listen to you, bruh. Thank you, Laura. Tammy Reeves, speak that on number 47. So we're going to just start calling Kamala Harris 47. Ooh, you know what I should do? I'm not going to tell y'all because y'all going to steal old Sherwin's idea. Y'all be stealing. Remember when she went after Joe Biden in that debate and said, I'm that little girl. And then she got the little t-shirts printed up and then she sold them to raise money for her campaign. Joe Biden, you were against busing and I was part of the second class that integrated the Oakland school system. I was that little girl. And everybody fell in love with Kamala. So we should get t-shirts printed up this to have the number 47 on it, right? Because she'll be the 47th president of the United States and say, I'm that little girl, number 47. Y'all go ahead. That's a free one. Number 47. I'm that little girl, president. Lahoma Griff. I haven't got the first check yet. There's something like 35 million people that haven't gotten their first Trump check. That just means you're probably a Democrat. What do we got here? So some of you guys, I want to read comments from new people. And thank you for people that are watching for the first time. I appreciate that. We do this every day from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And we're, having conversation about the city of Milwaukee, but also how we fit into national politics as well. I do have a story about our governor here in the state of Wisconsin. Weren't we just talking about Tony Evers? When was I talking about Tony? Yesterday? Republicans have started to attack him already about being soft on the rioting that took place in the city of Madison, which I find rich because when the gun people were protesting the stay-at-home orders, and when they went and stormed the damn Capitol with their guns and playing dress-up, make-believe, and camouflage, and most of those people wouldn't even bust a grape, but they got their little, and there was a woman out there with like a teal-colored AR-15 rifle trying to make their statement. Republicans won't say nothing about that, how their voters and supporters act a fool, but they're going to bring up the rioting and the looting, and know that Republicans are going to need to use that. I'm going to be honest with you guys. They're going to need to show people that are fighting for this democracy, people that were in the streets protesting, they want to show, first of all, the country that that's what Democrats do. Democrats riot and Democrats loot. No, Democrats were ready to start an American revolution the exact same way this republic was founded. Don't let Republicans take that narrative. What you saw in the streets, including fires that were set, and some of the fires were set by white supremacists because they're being prosecuted. Don't forget that either. They were planted in those crowds to start trouble. I even have a clip of Scott Walker when he thought he was talking to one of the Koch brothers. Scott Walker, when he was dealing with protests in Madison because he wanted to gut and ultimately did gut public sector unions, Scott Walker said he had discussed with his team about planting troublemakers in the crowd when they were protesting Act 10 in Madison to make it look like those union members and those who support unions were the ones causing the mayhem. But the only reason why Governor Walker didn't do that is because it would have forced him to have to quell all of the Act 10 hoopla. Like, he wasn't ready to settle. He's like, well, if things get violent, then they're going to want me to settle, and I'm not ready to do that. But keep in mind, Scott Walker said that he was thinking about planting troublemakers. It is something that Republicans do to try and derail a movement that can start another republic. Remember, this country was founded by a bunch of white people that didn't want to pay their taxes, and so they revolted. And they killed a bunch of people. They killed the English people. Now, we were still slaves, but we were watching. We learned how to form a republic. And we call that black nationalism because we know everything that we need to do to form our own republic. But you know what we do? At the core of what we as black people believe, and we're deeply Christian. You can blame us or not blame us, but we are. Because if it wasn't for Christianity, we would have killed a lot of white people. Like, the God that white people gave us helped save white people. And I'm not being like trying to be a jerk or anything. I'm just being honest. Religion has made us more passive to the people that we should have been aggressive against. But we know how to form a nation because we saw America form a nation around us and about us. The Civil War was about states' rights to keep and own slaves as a mode of industry. We saw that. We saw white people fighting each other. We were the first ones murdered in the American Revolution. Crispus Attucks, a black man, was the first shot fired and the first person killed. We have seen a nation form around us and about us. So we have been taking notes. You can sleep on black intelligence all you want, but remember, us being in this country, we have learned everything about white people. Every bit of your culture has been shoved down our throats. We know everything about you. Y'all just starting to learn about us. So you created the monster. Every now and again, we rear our heads a little bit and got to burn a little stuff down and let you know we're serious. Was just at the commemoration, the celebration of Seville Smith, who was killed by a Milwaukee police officer in August of 2016. They had a big event at Sherman Park that I attended yesterday. There were some fires that burned in Sherman Park. Remember that? They burned down a Minneapolis police station after the death of George Floyd. Just to let you know, we know how to form a republic, but we still keep giving y'all a chance to get it right. We have so much faith in this country, and the reason why black people have not completely upended this country is because we know it can be good. You just got to give us a shot at running the nation. Barack Obama should have calmed a lot of fears about what black power looks like. You know what black power looks like? You know what black power is? A black father taking care of his daughters and not cheating on his wife. You know what black power is? Helping everybody. You know what black power is? Looking out for the little guy, looking out for the worker. That's what black power is. When we get power, we help everybody. You're not going to find a black member of Congress that says, yeah, I'm just going to support a whole bunch of bills that are black only. Never. We know what it's like to be counted out. And every black person you know, our well-meaning white progressive friends, have stories about how other white well-meaning friends have hurt us, have lied to us, have gotten us fired, have called the police on us. Because you know that stuff was happening before you had your cell phone camera, but you didn't believe us. As long as you know, we know how to form a new republic. We're just choosing to work with this one. David Boxhorn says, and half the Republican caucus refused to vote for more spending. So they're running a commercial now that says Joe Biden wants to raise taxes twice as much as Hillary Clinton. Well, he might have to, because we clearly need more funding for testing, for PPE, and for coronavirus support. But they're going to twist the narrative and say, oh, Joe Biden wants to raise your taxes. Because Donald Trump kept cutting taxes for rich people. One of the reasons why we can't have a uniform strategy to combat the coronavirus, because we don't have any money. Let me tell you something else. Have you guys been watching the stock market? Of course you haven't. Well, some of you have. The stock market has been moving in a different direction than the U.S. economy, right? The gross domestic product, so everything that America produces, is down a third. We're not even probably in the top 5 of top producing countries in the world anymore because of our lack of response or our ability to respond to the coronavirus. So we're actually in a terrible spot when it comes to our economy. But the stock market has been consistently going up. I think it's had a bad day the past couple of days. But while the economy was doing worse and getting worse and more people were being laid off and then people's unemployment dried up or their unemployment got cut, the stock market kept going up. You want to know why? Because Donald Trump is using the Fed and the U.S. Treasury to buy stocks. You understand? You know what socialism is? It is when government owns the means of production. Donald Trump is implementing a socialist agenda that Bernie Sanders wouldn't even touch. The U.S. government is buying equities. It's buying stocks. So when Donald Trump says, ooh, look, we're having a record stock market. The stock market is a record. We're printing money so we can buy stocks so the stock market goes up. As long as people are buying shares of stock, the market goes up. If the market is going up, you can fool Americans that don't know anything about economics that the economy is actually fundamentally sound. No, it isn't. It means the U.S. government owns stock in companies. The government is buying the means of production. Now, I'm not going to get into a whole manifesto on capitalism, but this is just one example of the things that Trump is doing that it doesn't even rise to people's attention. There are thousands of other little micro aggressive issues he is doing with our politics that people can't even be concerned about because there's so much else going on with the coronavirus and everything else. But no, we are buying, as the American people, our money. We're buying stocks. Now, we're not going to get the dividends, but that's why the stock market is being propped up. Monica Emma said, Chandra Levy. Thank you, Monica. Y'all are quick with that Google. Thank you. Tammy Reed said Lacey. You might be thinking of Lacey Peterson, maybe. Tammy Reed, yes. Chandra Levy, that's it. Dave Boxhorn says, wasn't that Joe Scarborough's assistant? Didn't Joe Scarborough, somebody got murdered because he was a congressman. Then there was some murder. So this goes back to comments I was saying earlier that Washington, D.C. is sex, lies, and videotape. It totally is. Remember the show Scandal? Of course you remember, because y'all would, not only would y'all watch Scandal every week, you would post on social media, ooh, Olivia Pope. There are legitimate fixers that make millions of dollars fixing the scandals of politicians on Washington, D.C. Dion James says, I definitely appreciate your passion about the election, Sherwin. Thank you, Dion. You know, it means a lot to me because, you know, as a black man, as a black child, you're told you can't make a mistake. You can't get in trouble. You can't be a kid. You know, if I go to a party, let's say when I was in high school or even in college, and I was surrounded by white people, which gave me, I think, a more well-rounded perspective because there's so many different kinds of white people. They're not all the same. I think they've all been, to some extent, white culture, and especially the religious aspect of their culture, has indoctrinated a lot of them the same way to be, you know, to be good citizens and to follow the rules no matter what the rules are, to not cause trouble, to not be a rabble-rouser. But in instilling those values in white Christian America, it's also naturally white supremacist, right? And so a lot of them were indoctrinated that way. But as white kids grow up and begin to see the world for what it is, not what their parents or grandparents tell them, and they begin to rebel against those systems. When they rebel against those systems, it's when their eyes open to other cultures who just, our very presence is rebellion. It's really complicated, but it's also a beautiful story. So there's a lot of really good white people out there. There's a lot of them. But they have this unusual kind of power. Even those that think that they don't have any power, they have the power to change minds and to be on the right side of history. But as an example, I would go to, you know, an event or a party or something where there's a bunch of white people, and don't let alcohol be involved because it's very unpredictable. And let's say a woman's purse went missing. 75 people at the party, right? I'm the only black guy. Purse went missing. It's a drunk woman who lost her purse because she's drunk, okay? And what'll happen is you see them whispering. Like they're all looking for the purse, but they're all looking at me. They're giving me side eye. Because when you're the black person in the room, any crime that gets committed, you must have done it. And then what'll happen is one of my cool white friends will be like, Sherwin, can I pull you aside for a second, dude? Yeah, they think that you, like, dude, if you got the purse, man, just like, you know, they won't do anything if you just give it back. You know how many times that's happened to me? Where something goes missing and I'm the only black person there, because instead of white people thinking that white people can steal from one another, which they have a history of doing, it must be me. And I always come back with this same thing whenever that happens to me, because it would happen a lot. And my parents would tell me, sure, when you tell them white folks, you guarantee you got more money in your pocket than their parents got in their bank account. I don't need to steal from you. You have nothing I want. So that I can go on forever, clearly. Replying to Lahoma Griff, Teresa Ganderson. Hi, hope you're doing good. Oh, y'all having your own little conversations. Alden Higgins, have you ever watched House of Cards? It tells you a lot about how Washington works. Oh, I love that show. Then Kevin Spacey got Me Too'd. Kevin Spacey got Me Too'd because I think he had an affair with a 14-year-old boy. The House of Cards, while it is dramatized, I think it also is a little bit of fan fiction, but that DC works. It's the halls of power for the world. When you have a military that spends, you know, nearly $1 trillion. I did a story some years ago about the accounting in the U.S. Pentagon was so bad that if you shook the couch cushions in the Pentagon, you'd find like $132 billion, just because how they overspend and how they write these unlimited contracts. You know, the Koch brothers had a military contract to provide toiletries to the U.S. military. Like, because, you know, military bases, they need like toilet paper and hand soap. And so the Koch brothers had a whole division of their industry to just supply the military. Like when they go overseas, they need toiletries. And those of you that don't know, you know now, Angel Soft toilet paper, which is really inexpensive. It's really cheap. It's probably more expensive now, but it's really inexpensive toilet paper. That is the Koch brothers. They had a tens of millions of dollar contract to just provide toilet paper to the U.S. military because they spend so much money. And when you have a nation that has a military that's the size of ours, you then become more powerful than any other nation, meaning that the decisions that are made in Washington, D.C. can have an effect on the world. And I say that because if you don't agree with America, you know what we'll do to you? We'll kill your leaders, we'll influence your elections, and we'll bomb your country. Or even worse, we'll put sanctions on you. We were able to be the bully with the big sword for a very, very long time, but that has all fallen apart now. We had and earned, especially after World War II, we were very respected, also because our homeland infrastructure was not destroyed in World War II. We gutted Japan. Japan was glowing in the dark because we dropped 2 nuclear bombs, so they were radioactive. Japan was no good. Europe was completely ruined. It's rebuilt now. A lot of those cities that were damaged and destroyed during World War II are thoroughly modern. Postmodernism, right, is the era after World War II. The modernist era was the Civil War up until World War II. So a lot of those European cities, including their economies, post-modern because we destroyed it all. But we were so respected and feared because we got the nuclear weapon first, and we used that to bully the world. And to some extent, it was useful in the first epoch of American history because we had this incredible military, and Reagan bankrupted the Soviet Union. That's why the Soviet Union collapsed, because we had the ability to tax the American people, because Ronald Reagan used to tax your income like a Democrat would. He was a drunk liberal when it came to raising taxes, and he put it in the military. So we would build more and build more tanks and build more bombs. And the Soviet Union trying to compete with us, but they didn't have the same economy that we had, and they ultimately bankrupted themselves. But the next era, the next epoch of American history is going to be forged and designed by the sentiments of those who were once marginalized. When the slave gets to the White House, there's a new era of American history. And what 2020 represents is a more sophisticated and digital and electronic civil war. This is an American revolution, and you clearly see what we're fighting against. So please stop saying you are not going to vote for Donald Trump, because if you don't, I hope you know how to shoot a gun. I mean, we can have it. We can do it a bunch of different ways, right? And I'm not inciting violence. I'm just saying figuratively, we're in a war for the soul of this nation so that people of color can have a say-so in government. We're not trying to steal everything from white people. But whatever y'all want to donate, by all means. We just want a fair shot to be able to govern and help people that have been counted out. That's it. That's all. Jeff Polinsky in the excellent Tom Hanks movie, Charlie Wilson's War. One of my favorites, Jeff. Love that movie. There's a crude line regarding female DC staffers. You can teach them to type, but you can't teach them to grow. They said tits in the movie. Such was DC culture in the 1980s. He called his staff jailbait. That was a good movie. Alicia Griffin. So, Sherman, what's your take on Wauwatosa? Their mayor, common council, police chief, the Wauwatosa Police Union, the serial killing cop with the big dog, along with the specified time frame set aside for protesters to have and share their voice. So, entirely unconstitutional. What the Wauwatosa mayor said, and I live in a neighborhood that just, I abut Wauwatosa, right up next to it. He said that you can only protest from 12 until 8. And so when I heard that, he's like putting together like essentially a de facto curfew. You can only protest between noon and 8 p.m. That is one of the most unconstitutional things I have ever heard. You can't tell people. So the only reason why we have, or the most profound reason why we have the right to assemble and address grievances against our government is so that government can't tell us what to do. We tell it what to do. So if we have a First Amendment right to have redress against our government, government can't say, well, you can protest, but only in the time frames the government sets. You got me wanting to get up and get out in these streets just to protest the fact that the Wauwatosa mayor said you can only protest from noon until 8. Let me be real clear about this. Those of y'all that have been involved and have been consistent in protesting for the firing of Officer Mensah, I love you to no end. Keep it up. But I would say start your next protest at 8:30. Start your next one after the mayor said the protest time expires. He can't do that. And here's the thing. He knows he can't do that. Because let me tell you what the ACLU was doing. The ACLU is the black powder in the gun that fires the shots in the revolution. The ACLU is just ready. And they've raised a lot of money. Oh, y'all been giving so much money to the ACLU. They're ready for that fight. That's an easy one. I'm not a lawyer, and I take that case. That is as unconstitutional as you can get, telling people when they can protest. He needs to get recalled for that. Instead of recall Tom Barrett. What the mayor of Wauwatosa is? I just put the mayor of Wauwatosa's Tom. Ooh, Tom gonna be mad. Tom is my guy, though. Tom gave me my start in politics, but Tom knows. You know, this is a job that I have. For a long time, I worked in the only industry that's protected by the Constitution: speech, communication, media. And sometimes, you know, you got to go after those folks. Lahoma Griff, money, root of all evil. I don't disagree. Alicia Griffin, did you hear the reporter called Trump out on his 3.5 years of lies? My, oh my, groundbreaking. Well, hopefully. Calling Trump out on his lies is like saying the sun rises in the east. It's like, I don't know. Hey, Marcy Stutzman. Charles Reeves says, good morning. Jocelyn or Jacqueline? Selecki Orozco. Sherwin, I generally agree with you. But can you explain again what you are basing your claim that Capitol Hill is overwhelmingly Jewish is based on? Full disclosure, Jewish woman here in solidarity. Well, thank you, Jacqueline or Jocelyn. Might be less so now. But leadership. So Chuck Schumer, Jewish. And I'm not going to name all the Jewish people in Capitol Hill, but a lot of your chiefs of staff and a lot of your leadership positions, so if you look at what the Jewish population is proportionately in the United States, there's probably a higher proportion of members of the House and the Senate and their chiefs of staff that are Jewish than their proportion in the United States. I know I got to be real careful about that. I love my Jews. I guess that might have sounded kind of biased, like Donald Trump saying he loved the blacks. But the Jews were right there with us. During the Civil Rights Movement, was the next logical step in human evolution, social evolution, after the Holocaust, right? So look at World War II ended August of 1945. Civil rights movement really began in earnest when black GIs were coming home from the theaters of war in Europe. So Holocaust, and remember, black GIs fought Nazis. So there was a relationship formed there. So when everybody comes back to America to try and enjoy post-war prosperity, black people had zero rights. Zero, even though we helped win World War II. See the movie Red Tails, which is oddly a love story about a black man falling in love with an Italian woman. So that being said, we have an allyship, but it's complicated though. Because some Jews, and I got to be careful, you don't talk about the gays, you don't talk about the Jews, because they'll come for you. Sometimes you can shed your ethnic skin when you come to America. If you look physically white and if you change your name, because a lot of white folks that came from Southern and Eastern Europe changed their names to blend in better here in America. Like they wanted to shed their ethnicity. They wanted to make sure that they learn English and their kids learn English, and they weren't Polish anymore, or they weren't German anymore, or they weren't Greek anymore. Well, the Greeks still maintain their cultural identity, but they just became white. And there were people that Jews did that as well. They just didn't want to be culturally connected because there's a lot of anti-Semitism in America. We know that still exists. Donald Trump's minions were yelling, "Jews will not replace us," all through Charlottesville, and Donald Trump's daughter is Jewish. I mean, via marriage, Jared Kushner is Jewish. Who's the other one? The little monster. The one who pulls all the strings and calls all the shots. Oh, what's his name? The one that put together a bunch of the real evil policies in Trump's administration. I can't think of his name. I can see his face. That being said, let me back up. Was that Yamiche L. Cinder? Oh, you guys are talking amongst themselves. Chandra Levy is the missing intern from the early 2000s. Had an affair with Gary Condit. That's who it was. Justin Ferminish. I'm going to have to admit that old Sherwin was probably right regarding absentee voting. It sounds like even dropping off your ballot isn't going to be good enough. GOP is forming challenges against any ballots that don't have a postmark. Unbelievable. Oronde Milliage, we didn't see, we participated. Probably regarding something I said, but I talk a lot. But thank you, Oronde. Tarita Walker, you ain't never lied. Jesus saves all. Love your definition of black power. Thank you, Tony. All right, guys, let me get to this here because I'm already over an hour, which I guess I could talk forever, but I'm trying to be respectful here. From the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, apparently it's never too early to begin campaigning against an incumbent governor. The Wisconsin Republican Party began running TV ads on Wednesday called Asleep at the Switch, which accuses Democratic Governor Tony Evers of being MIA when riots broke out in Madison late on June 23rd and into the early morning of June 24th. The TV commercial bears a striking similarity to ads by President Donald Trump's campaign, which is trying to link the Democratic Party with riots, political chaos, and social unrest. Tony Evers has slept through a lot. Violence, fires, looting, people beaten, property destroyed, says the 30-second ad. It notes that the first-term Democratic governor has round-the-clock security. Quote, so Tony Evers didn't lose any sleep while rioters unleashed fire bombs, forcing 911 dispatchers to leave their posts. Now Tony's cronies plan to strip funding for law enforcement, and you can bet Tony Evers won't lose a minute of sleep over that. So I think on yesterday's program, I remarked that Rebecca Clayfish, a former Republican lieutenant governor under Scott Walker, is absolutely running for governor of the state in 2022. Also keeping in mind the flow of American politics says that if Democrats win the White House, the next midterm election, which will be 2022, Republicans clean house. Barack Obama gets elected in 2008. What happens in 2010? A huge Republican wave in which the Tea Party essentially was born. And so if we win the White House in November, and I hope we do, expect a Republican wave in 2022. Rebecca Clayfish is a monster campaigner, and she has a lot of charisma. She has this ability to mesmerize voters. I don't know how she does it, but she has escaped a lot of the criticism that stuck to Scott Walker. And I would venture to say Rebecca Clayfish is smarter than Scott Walker. They're going to come after Tony Evers hard. I came after Tony Evers hard because I want him to do more with his executive position as governor of the state of Wisconsin. He's the first Democrat that we've had since the year 2010 to be governor of the state of Wisconsin. He's not going to get a lot of bills signed into law, but he is doing what he can, I suppose. He's looking out for teachers, which you knew he was going to do that, but he's also pardoned more people than Scott Walker did. So far, Tony Evers has pardoned a total of 56 people compared to Scott Walker's 10 years. Scott Walker didn't pardon anybody, so he's doing that. But he is not using his platform to bully the Republicans in the legislature. He is also not using his platform to be an outspoken surrogate for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, which he should be doing because Wisconsin's a battleground state. And he knew that when he was running for governor in 2018. You're not going to get a lot of bills signed into law, but what you can do is promote the Democrats amongst folks in which Tony Evers has influence in this state. And he's not really doing that. So we have to decide this. And this is a conversation I'm going to have with black people, but white people, you're more than welcome to listen. So we're going to have to figure this out. This is me talking to the black folks. What's up, y'all? Y'all all right? Okay. Y'all want to save Tony Evers? Because you know it's going to be up to us. So I don't really know what he's done. He hasn't really made his presence felt in our community. You know, he does have a Milwaukee office, but it's a political office, but they're not acting political, because if you have a Milwaukee office for Tony Evers, to me that says black and brown outreach, but you know, whatever. They're not doing that. So what y'all want to do? Because we probably should start thinking about this now, if we want to save Tony Evers or not, because we're the only ones that can save him. Black people, black voters in Milwaukee. Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha, and a sprinkling of blacks in Madison and the Fox Valley. So we got to decide now, and we also need to let the governor know, like, your fate is in our hands. During the gubernatorial election of 2018, you know where the highest performing early vote location was? Midtown. You know the August 11th primary we just had, where a bunch of y'all didn't vote, 7 out of 10 of y'all stayed home? But you know what place had the most early in-person absentee votes? Half of the entire citywide total of early votes was cast at Midtown. So you don't need to tell us to vote. We need to start telling white folks that they need to vote. And so we got to decide as black people in this state, do we want to save Tony? Like, what, has he given us anything? Has he said Black Lives Matter? Because now our standard is so low. If Tony Evers gives a press conference, because he gives daily briefings on the coronavirus, which he needs to do. But if Tony was like, yo, DJ, kill that noise. Black Lives Matter. And then he goes on with the rest of the press conference, we'd be like, all right. I guess Tony, all right. Tony wore a Tupac shirt. Stock market up 10% this year so far. I watch it daily. Yeah, Alicia, that's good. I want you to watch that because that is the U.S. Treasury. So our mints, right, where our money is made, they're using American money to buy equities, to buy stocks, so that the market goes up. It's propped up by us. But when the day comes where we can no longer, the U.S. Treasury under Donald Trump can no longer buy stocks, the market is going to crash. So that money that's going to prop up the stock market, you know what that is? I'm going to tell you what that is. That's your stimulus check, okay? That's your funding for PPE for schools. That's your funding for like rapid coronavirus tests. Donald Trump is taking our money and buying stock with it, so the stock market is going up. And at the same time, the post office is being starved, needs $25 billion just to get through the rest of this year because of the number of people that should have the right to vote via mail, to vote from home. But Donald Trump is holding up the second stimulus. Well, he's saying he's holding up the second stimulus because, you know, he doesn't want the post office to get the $25 billion. I don't think we have the money. Quite honestly, that's why Donald Trump is holding off on the second stimulus. We don't have the money. We gave it to the stock market. Vanessa Garrett, you're exactly correct. Thank you. Dave Boxhorn, the Fed has been pumping trillions into the market. Yes, David, thank you for bringing that up. Propping up the 10% who own Wall Street. Wall Street is not an indicator, says Vanessa Garrett, of the health of the economy. It's a very deceptive concept. In other words, now is a great time to buy. Warren Buffett said, and I'm going to end the broadcast with this, even though I titled the broadcast, Chief Morales is going to get, his pension is going to be $8,719.86 a month. Well, we got time to talk about the chief. Not today. We'll talk about him another time. Wall Street is not an indicator of the health of the economy. It's a very deceptive concept. In other words, now is a great time to buy. Warren Buffett said, when everybody is buying, you should be selling. And when everybody is selling, you should be buying. So don't go along with whatever the prevailing sentiment is on the economy. Sometimes you need to go in the opposite direction. Thanks, guys. Appreciate all of your comments and the lively debate. Remember, you can go to the forum2.com, the forum, the number 2.com. You also can go to YouTube, type in the forum, the number 2.com, and then our YouTube channel comes up and you can watch previous shows if you're so inclined. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll talk to you on Monday.